Welcome, weary one. Drift gently now, let go of the day's noise, and come with me into a place where time has no teeth, and memory is older than the wind. Tonight we do not chase history, we lie down beside it. We step quietly across the threshold where story meets dream, where the gods once whispered across the branches of an ancient tree. This is not the Odin of war chants and spear storms, not the one praised in sagas shouted by torchlight. Tonight, we seek the Odin hidden behind his many names, the one who waits in shadowed halls, who gave away his eye not for power, but for knowing. A god, not of certainty, but of ceaseless questions. In the hush between stars, he walks, not to rule, but to understand, not to conquer, but to see, and in that seeing, to carry the unbearable weight of truths too old for the world to hold. He was king, yes, but also wanderer, beggar, poet, ghost, and somewhere beneath the stories, beneath the mask and myths, was something else, something afraid, something deeply, desperately alone. Let us not rush. Let the night stretch its limbs. In this slow unraveling, we will travel through the mythic fog of Ginnungagap, the yawning nothing that came before all things. We'll see the gods blink into being, feel the shiver of the first frost, the first fire. We'll wander the roots of Yggdrasil, that immense ash tree binding the 9 realms together like threads on a loom of time. We will follow Odin as he emerges from that world of giants and blood and sacred breath. We'll trace his longing, his sacrifices, the silent bargains struck beneath silver skies. We'll sit beside Mimir's whispering head and try, just try, to understand what he truly sought in all his wanderings. And later still, we will listen to the stories he left behind, stories twisted, tangled, retold. Was Odin ever whole, or just a collection of names stitched from stories others told for him? Could there be another tale half buried beneath snow and silence, a version not spoken aloud but dreamt in the dark? Let each word tonight be soft as snowfall. Let the rhythm of the story slow your breathing. You do not need to understand every detail. Simply feel the world as it unfolds. You are not an outsider here. You are drifting inside the myth. You are floating in the cradle of Yggdrasil's branches, wrapped in fog and feathers, far from the waking world. The wind of Asgard moves like a sigh across the tundra. The roots of the world reach down into unknowable depths. Somewhere far above, ravens circle slow and silent, and a one-eyed god watches not with power, but with sorrow. Tonight, let us meet him again, not as king, but as question. Segment 1, How the Legend Was Born, Part 1. Primordial void, chaos, or cosmic silence, long before the gods breathed, before time cracked open the stillness, there was only the great gap, Ginnungagap, a nothing so vast it hummed with silence. No stars shone, no sun warmed, no thought moved through its depth, not a void of terror, but of potential, of waiting. On one side of the gap, northern, cold, eternal, lay Niflheim, the realm of mist, a land of ice, ancient even before the word ancient was born. Its rivers ran not with water, but with poison and frost, coiling out from a well called Vergelmir, guarded by the serpent of beginnings. Mist rose constantly from its depths, curling into the void, and opposite it, to the south, was Muspelheim, the land of fire, bright, wild, crackling. It blazed with living flame. It was not evil, not rageful, just consuming. It danced in its own rhythm, alone in the heat. From its heart roared the oldest fire giant, Surtur, bearing a sword as bright as suns not yet born, but he too slept, waiting. Between these two, ice and fire, was the yawning gap, and it was in the meeting of these ancient forces that the first stirrings began. The frost from Niflheim crept toward the fire of Muspelheim, and where they touched, something impossible happened. Ice did not melt, fire did not fade. Instead, they fused, and from their union rose drops of life. The melting of rime birthed Ymir, the first being, a frost giant unlike anything before or since. He was vast, ancient, and alone, though he did not know what alone meant, for he had nothing to compare himself to. From his sweating skin grew more beings, creatures made not in love or intention, but in the deep breathing of chaos itself. His armpits birthed giants, his legs grew suns, his dreams became worlds unto themselves. He was, in all ways, life spilling beyond boundaries. Beside him, in those early mists, arose a cow. Her name was Audumbla, and she was not mere animal, but essence, grazing not on grass, but on salt-licked ice. Her milk sustained Ymir, though he did not thank her. He did not know how. The cow licked and licked at the salty stone, and over days that had no names, something emerged. First, a hair, then a face, then a whole being. This was Buri, the first of the Aesir gods, handsome, golden, noble. From Buri came Bor, and from Bor and a giantess named Bestla, 3 sons were born, Odin, Vili, and Ve. And so the pattern began. From frost and fire came flesh and force, from licking ice came gods, and from gods came something else. Curiosity, desire, a yearning not merely to exist, but to shape, to name, to know. Where the giants lived in brawling instinct, these new beings, these gods, dreamt. They wanted more, they wanted story. Odin, even then, was different. While his brothers laughed and fought and carved crude symbols in the bones of night, Odin listened. He watched. The gap still echoed in his blood, and the silence between stars called to him. He did not wish to be merely one among many. He wanted to see further, to pierce the haze and know what lay beneath the skin of the world. It was this yearning that led the brothers, Odin, Vili, and Ve, to confront Ymir. They did not slay him for hatred, they did not fear him, but they knew the world could not begin while he still breathed, for Ymir was the all, endless, directionless, unformed, and so they rose with their God-forged strength, and in that nameless time before time, they struck him down. Ymir's blood flowed, a flood that drowned many of his own kind. The gods took his body and shaped the world. From his flesh they made the land, from his bones the mountains. His teeth became stones, his skull the sky's dome, and from his brain the clouds. They placed sparks from Muspelheim into the heavens, making stars. It was not murder, It was birth, from chaos, cosmos, from body, beauty, from death, form. The world, as we know it, was not created by love. It was carved from necessity, from sacrifice, and in that act, Odin changed forever. He had killed the progenitor. He had shaped the earth from the corpse of the one who came before. He was not merely a god, but the one who chose meaning over silence. Still, the gap remained. The memory of that vast nothingness lingered in Odin's soul like frost on ancient stone. He could not forget what had been. And so, even as time began and days passed and creatures walked, he carried a hunger. A deep, echoing question. Why? The 9 realms would come soon. The branches of Yggdrasil would stretch outward, carrying the fate of elves, dwarves, mortals, and giants. But for now, the world was young, and Odin was already searching, already listening for voices beneath the wind, already beginning to fear the weight of knowing and the cost it would demand. Part 2. Emergence of beings, gods, spirits, or forces. From the carved bones of the first being, the world took its slow shape, yet it was not enough to make land and sky, to set the stars drifting in the dark. Something more was needed: movement, breath, mind. And so the story continued. In the growing silence after Ymir's fall, Odin, Vili, and Ve stood upon a world they had sculpted but not yet stirred. Mountains rose behind them like the folded backs of sleeping giants. Rivers wound slowly from pools of blood-turned water, but still the world was empty, vast, hollow, the bones of a being without a soul. The 3 brothers wandered its edges, each of them changed by what they had done. Ve, youngest, laughed still and spoke in riddles. Vili, strong and sharp-eyed, sought structure. He named stones, counted stars, and made patterns in the dust. But Odin walked alone. His mind pulled always forward, always inward. He felt the stillness between things, and it troubled him. It was during one such wandering along a quiet shore where the ocean first began to breathe that they found them. 2 trees, one ash, tall and slightly twisted, one elm, soft and curving with a faint green glow. Nothing remarkable at first. They stood close together, leaning slightly as if whispering. Yet the moment Odin touched them, something stirred, not in the wood, but in him. A recognition, not of the trees themselves, but of what they could become. Without speaking, he took a deep breath. He placed his palm upon the ash and felt its grain beneath his skin, rough and honest. Then the elm, cool and smooth like the hush before rainfall. And then they changed. From the ash, a form began to bloom, arms unfolding from branches, hair from leaves. From the elm, legs and breath and memory unfurling like moss from stone. Vili stepped forward, offering them thought. Ve followed, giving them voice, color, and shape. And Odin, he gave them something deeper, soul, will, the mysterious inward fire. And so the first humans were born. Ask the man from the ash, Embla, the woman from the elm. They stood trembling on this new shore, blinking at the starlit sky as though waking from a dream they could not remember. They knew nothing, but they felt everything. They reached for one another, not out of habit, but need. They were new, but they carried something ancient within them, the ache to become. The gods watched them with quiet awe, not pride exactly, not ownership, but something gentler, like how one watches a flame take hold in a long dead hearth. Ask and Embla did not yet build, they did not yet speak in songs, but they moved across the land, and where they walked, the world seemed to soften. Animals came near them, curious. Winds bent toward their breath. They were, in a way, the dream of the gods made flesh, and in them, Odin saw something he both longed for and feared. He, the god who shaped the world, could not fully understand these small beings. They did not crave power. They did not seek the secrets beneath the stars, yet they were content. They laughed. They wept without shame. They loved without need for legend. And this unsettled him. The gods returned to their high halls, to Asgard, which they built among the clouds and golden light. Bifrost, the shimmering bridge of rainbow flame, connected it to the mortal world. It was a place of joy, of drink, of story. But Odin, he could not rest. Even among laughter, his thoughts drifted back to the yawning void, to Ginnungagap, and the sound of nothing. So he listened. He sat beneath Yggdrasil, the world tree that had grown since the slaying of Ymir. Its roots touched all things. One reached Hel, the realm of the dead. Another reached Jotunheimr, land of the giants. Another wound into the heavens themselves. The tree whispered constantly, not in words, but in movement, in tension, in breath. And Odin listened. He heard the world before the world, felt the riddle of beginning. He came to know that even gods were not beyond fate, that there were threads none could untangle, not even he. The Norns, those shadowed weavers who spun the threads of destiny, dwelled at the base of Yggdrasil, near the Well of Urd. They wove every life, every death, into a tapestry none could fully read. Odin visited them often, silent. They did not speak unless they chose to, and often they did not choose. He would watch the threads, try to follow them. His own he could never find, or perhaps he feared to look too closely. It was in those long silences beside the weavers of fate and the murmuring tree that Odin began to change. He stopped laughing as his brothers did. He stopped seeking battle as the younger gods desired. He began to wander further beyond the edges of the known, to Vanaheim, realm of the wise and fertile Vanir gods, to Alfheim, where light elves moved like echoes of sunlight, to Midgard, where Ask and Embla's children now grew and spoke and built. And in all his travels, he asked, he listened, he sought. He did not fear death, but he feared not understanding it. He feared blindness of the soul, and so he gave much of himself away, piece by piece, in exchange for wisdom. Some gods sought gold, others sought fame. Odin sought the shape beneath the shadow. He wandered not for glory, but for answers. In time, Odin came to be known not just as king, but as seeker, as speaker of riddles, lover of mystery. He collected names, over 100 of them, each a reflection of some mask, some journey, some secret kept. He called himself the Allfather, but also Gangleri, the weary wanderer. He called himself the Hooded One, the grey-bearded stranger, the whisper in the wind. Every name was true, and none were complete. Other beings emerged in these early ages. The Vanir gods, Njord, Freyja, born of water and wildness, danced in harmony with the land. The dwarves, born from Ymir's flesh, carved their halls beneath mountains and forged wonders in secret. The giants lingered in Jotunheim, ancient and bitter, yet not all cruel, and the elves, both light and dark, shimmered through their twilight realms, barely brushing the waking world. Each kind had its own truth, its own purpose, and Odin tried to understand them all. But the more he learned, the more he saw how little could truly be known, how the past twisted in memory, how the future darkened in fear, and how even gods could be bound by questions they could not answer. Still he searched, still he wandered, because what Odin feared most was not death, nor even chaos. What he feared was blindness, the kind that closed eyes to the dream behind the dream, the kind that mistook the mask for the face beneath, and in that fear he became wise, wiser than any who came before him, and lonelier too. Part 3. Formation of the world, nature, time, or early magic. In the slow birth of the world from chaos, there came a time when things began to settle, not into stillness, but into rhythm. The furious unfolding of the early realms gave way to something quieter, steadier. The gods, once sparks of change, became keepers of order. Their halls grew taller, their feasts longer, and their sense of permanence began to stretch. And still, Odin wandered, but now he wandered through a world taking shape beneath his gaze. Yggdrasil, the world tree, stood vast and trembling. Its 3 roots pierced the 3 deepest realms, one into Niflheim, the world of ice and death, one into Jotunheim, the land of giants, and one into Asgard, home of the gods. It connected all things, seen and unseen, and its bark glimmered faintly with runes not yet read. Odin knew this tree was more than wood, more than symbol. It was the spine of time, the bones of being. Beneath its branches, history had not yet been written, but it was already unfolding. Time in the Norse world was never linear. It curled like roots. It echoed like wind, and the Norns, at their sacred well near one of Yggdrasil's roots, continued to weave. Each morning, they poured water and white clay over the tree's base, tending to it with quiet reverence. And from the well of Erd, the past fed into the present, and the present reached into the yet to come. They called it Weird, a weaving of fate that even the gods must follow. Around this growing tree, the 9 realms settled like petals on a flower none could see whole. Asgard shimmered in the highest branches, home of the Aesir gods, Odin, Frigg, Thor, Tyr, and others. Their halls were golden, yet their fate already darkened by shadow, for they knew that no glory remained untouched by twilight. Midgard, the world of mortals, lay below like a protected garden. Surrounded by oceans, wrapped in divine magic, it was the realm Odin returned to most often. Here, Ask and Embla's children built their homes, lit their fires, and told their first stories. Jotunheim, rugged and wild, pulsed with ancient strength. The giants, Ymir's kin, dwelt there, not as villains, but as primal echoes of the world before world. They were not all cruel. but they remembered, and that memory made them dangerous. Niflheim was a cold whisper, land of the dead, of mists and forgotten names. Hel, the half-living daughter of Loki, ruled there, not with malice, but inevitability. She did not hunt the dead, she simply waited, for all things must come to her in time. Muspelheim, realm of fire, danced beyond comprehension. Its fires burned with prophecy. Surtur, the fire giant, stood in silence, sword in hand, waiting for the day when the tree would crack and flames would consume the world. Vanaheim, peaceful and fertile, housed the Vanir gods, beings of sea, soil, and harmony. Long ago, they warred with the Aesir, but peace had since bound them. From this union came wisdom, fertility, and quiet strength. Alfheim, home of the light elves, shimmered like dew in sunlight. Its people were graceful, radiant, and distant, more concept than flesh. Svartalfheim, realm of the dwarves, pulsed beneath the earth, echoing with hammer and forge, invention and greed, and deep below all things, beneath roots no one dared trace fully, was Helheim, and perhaps something deeper still. Odin studied all of these places. He wandered between them, not as king, but as seeker. While others grew comfortable in their roles, he remained in motion. He learned the names of rivers and the secrets of stars. He listened to the breath of the world and tried to hear the silence behind it. And in doing so, he began to understand something strange and terrifying. The world was not permanent. Yggdrasil would not stand forever. Even the stars would fall. There would come a great end, a twilight of gods, a Ragnarok, and Odin would die, but not yet. Still, he began to prepare. He watched the dwarves as they forged. They were strange creatures, born of stone and fire, more clever than wise, and from them came gifts, some beautiful, some dangerous. The spear Gungnir, crafted for Odin, would never miss its mark. The golden ring Draupnir, which multiplied itself, a symbol of eternal return. From these tools, magic bloomed. Magic in the Norse world was never clean, never kind. It came not from command, but from knowledge, from sacrifice. Odin began to seek it in all its forms. He learned cedar, an ancient art of weaving fate and perception. It was a magic of women, of wild spirits and intuitive knowing. But Odin, unashamed, bent to its rhythms, for knowledge had no gender, only price. Frigg, his wife, wise and distant, knew many things he never did, but she kept her silence, as was her way. Between them was not passion, but a kind of solemn unity. Two beings who understood too much to explain. Thor, his son, was strength incarnate, bold, boisterous, beloved. Odin loved him in his own distant way, but knew he would never see the world as Odin did. Thor fought giants, Odin spoke with them. And Loki, Loki, his blood brother, his companion in mischief and chaos. They laughed once, in the old days. But Odin saw, even then, that Loki was the flame that could not be held, a necessary disorder, beautiful and tragic. Time, in this growing world, was marked not by clocks, but by stories. The passing of ages was felt through sagas sung and battles remembered, through winters that bit harder and summers that sang with softer winds. The gods began to see themselves not as eternal, but as written. Even their lives became myth, while still being lived, and Odin, ever the wanderer, saw the flaw beneath it all. He saw that even magic was not enough, even wisdom would not save them, that knowing the future did not change its course, but still he could not stop seeking, for in the search was meaning. This was how early magic formed, not from chants or incantations, but from attention, from presence, from trade. To gain knowledge, something must be given, a secret for a secret, a name for a name, an eye for a drink of truth. But that is a tale for later. For now the world was rising like steam from a new forged blade. The gods watched their creations grow, and Odin stood just behind them, eyes not on the glory, but on the edge of shadow, listening for the thread that trembled beneath it all. Segment 2, The Legend Behind the Power, Part 1. Who they were, how they came to be, before he was Allfather, before the ravens, before the throne of Asgard, before the songs carved his name into the frost. Odin was only a whisper on the breath of giants. He was born not from fire, not from prophecy, but from a slow and quiet joining. His father, Bor, was of the Aesir line. His mother, Bestla, a giantess with roots deep in the frost of Jotunheimr, daughter of Bolthorn, a being whose name meant bitterness. And perhaps that taste lingered in Odin even then. Of the 3 sons born to Bor and Bestla, Vili, Ve, and Odin, it was the eldest who carried that strange, silent pull toward what lay beyond. Vili was the thinker, Ve the speaker. But Odin was the seer. He looked not at what was, but at what trembled just behind the veil of what might be. From a young age, if gods can be said to have youth, he watched with eyes that burned too bright, too far. He did not delight in battle as others did. He did not revel in music, in mead, in the pleasures of the hearth, not because he disdained them, but because something more persistent called to him. There are many tales of Odin, scattered like leaves across the sagas, but most begin when he already wears the crown of Asgard, already strides with Gungnir in hand and the wolves Geri and Freki at his heels. Most begin after he is a god. But we must begin before that, when he was still becoming. In the earliest days, Odin had many names, but none of them meant king. He wandered the wild places of the 9 realms, not to conquer, but to listen. He knelt by riverbeds and spoke with stones. He traced the lines on leaves, searching for messages. His brothers thought him strange, though they loved him. He was not restless, but relentlessly drawn to what others ignored. And what he saw frightened him. It is said that Odin learned of Ragnarok not in a single moment, but in flashes, glimpses, dreamlike ripples, a beast's paw in the snow, a whisper from a dying star, a giant's laughter cut short by silence. He came to understand that even the gods, he himself, were bound for ending. This knowledge did not break him, but it altered him. Where once he might have been content to rule, he now sought to know. He became obsessed with the source of wisdom. Where did it come from? Could it be grasped? Could it shield him from what lay ahead? And so Odin began his long journey, not outward, but inward, into realms beyond maps, into mysteries not meant for comfort. He found the Norns, those weavers of fate, and watched them as they dipped their fingers into Urd's well. He spoke with Volvas, wandering prophetesses who stitched meaning into symbols and interpreted the cries of crows. He bartered with spirits, with elves, with old things that remembered the gap before the world, and he listened to the wind. The ravens came later, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. They were not pets, they were not spies, they were pieces of his soul, split and given wings, sent out daily to fly across the realms and return with whispers. But even they could not tell him everything, and so Odin began to give. Slowly, steadily, he sacrificed parts of himself, not in grief, but in purpose. He was not like other gods. He was not content to be. He needed to know, and what he feared most was blindness, not of the eyes, but of the heart, the spirit. Somewhere in the still places of the world, Odin began to change. His laughter quieted, his gaze deepened, and he began to speak less and listen more. There was in him a sadness the other gods did not yet understand. It was not melancholy, not despair, but a kind of soft mourning for what he knew would come and what could never be stopped. It was in those silent years that he became the hooded one, the wanderer, the grey beard at the edge of the firelight. He walked among mortals, among the Vanir, among shadows, always asking, always watching. He gave his time, he gave his eye, and eventually he would give far more. But we must not rush ahead. We must stay here for a while longer in this quiet middle of Odin's becoming. He was not yet crowned, not yet robed in glory. He was only a god learning to carry the unbearable weight of truth, and already he was very tired. Part 2. A significant journey, challenge, or transformation. There are prices whispered into the corners of the world. Prices that do not shout, but linger. Prices for truth, for vision, for the kind of knowing that does not rest lightly in the soul. Odin knew this. Or perhaps he only began to understand it when he came to the foot of Yggdrasil, not as a god, not as a king, but as an offering. You must imagine it softly, slowly. The sky dim, the air cold and clear. Yggdrasil's roots curl like ancient rivers beneath him. Its trunk rises so high it vanishes into starlight. Its bark hums with the breath of all things. And Odin, tired, solemn, silent, stands before it. He does not weep. He does not ask for comfort. He only stares up, and then he lifts the rope. This is the story of how Odin hanged himself upon the world tree, not in despair, not in punishment, but in sacrifice. For 9 days and 9 nights he hung there, pierced by his own spear, neither alive nor fully dead, alone, with no fire, no drink, no song, only wind, only silence, only the groaning creak of the tree, bearing his weight like time bears memory. No food passed his lips, no sleep came to close his one remaining eye. The stars spun above him like runes he had not yet read, and the wind tore at his robes as if trying to pull the god back to the nothingness from which he had come. What was he seeking? Not power, not dominion. He was seeking the runes, the deep magic beneath language, beneath thought, the primal symbols that shaped the bones of the world, the signs that spoke not in words but in truth, truth too old to be translated, too potent to be controlled. These runes were not taught. They could not be studied in scrolls or passed from mouth to mouth. They had to be earned, pulled from pain, revealed through sacrifice. The price was high. Odin gave himself to the tree, not as ruler, but as question. He became the question itself. He unmade his certainty, unspooled his godhood, and let his soul drift among the roots. And then, on the 9th night, he saw them, the runes, not with his eye, but with his silence. They rose from the depths like mist, like breath upon still water. They shimmered beneath him, ancient and humming, and Odin reached. With fingers numb and spirit half scattered, he reached, and he understood. Not all of them, not everything, but enough. The runes entered him, not as possession, but as burden. For now he saw the weave of fate more clearly, the paths ahead more vividly, and what he saw did not offer comfort, but it gave him purpose. He fell from the tree at dawn, weary beyond language, and from that moment forward he was changed. The runes were his now, etched not just in memory, but into the marrow of his being. He carried them in voice, in gaze, in breath. With them he could cast spells, shape perception, shift fate, but he never used them lightly, for he knew what they cost. They had not brought peace, they had brought clarity, and clarity is a sharp thing. Odin returned to Asgard, to the golden halls and silver cups, but he did not return the same. His eye, his traded eye, was gone, left in Mimir's well, far to the east, where knowledge slumbers beneath silence. He saw more clearly now with one eye than others did with two. His kin welcomed him, honored him, praised him, but Odin no longer sought praise. He sought preparation, for he had seen the wolf, he had seen the fire, he had seen the ships rising from hell's cold harbors, he had seen the end, and so he began to gather, not armies, not weapons, but knowledge. He sent Hugin and Munin across the skies each morning, returning at dusk to whisper what they had found. He studied the shape of dreams. He visited prophets. He learned the secret names of things, names that could bend the air itself. He became the god of wisdom, but not serenity. He drank deeply from Mimir's well, not with lips, but with spirit, for his eye floated there still, watching, listening. The well whispered not in voices, but in patterns. It told of ages past and ages still to come. It showed him riddles within riddles, and Odin began to speak in riddles too. He became hard to understand, not because he wished to confuse, but because the truths he carried could not be flattened into ordinary words. He wandered the world in many forms, sometimes as an old man with a crooked staff, sometimes as a shadow on the road, sometimes as a whisper behind the ear of a sleeping king, but always searching, always asking, never still. This was Odin's great transformation, not into power, but into mystery. He did not become the mightiest, but the most burdened, the most far-seeing, the most alone. Not even the gods could follow him where he went in thought and vision. They honored him, but they did not understand him. And perhaps that is what he feared most, that he would know too much to be known, that in becoming wise he would lose the warmth of not knowing. But still he chose it, still he climbed the tree, still he hung in silence, and still he reached. Part 3. The aftermath, legacy, or spiritual echo of their tale. When Odin stepped down from Yggdrasil's branches, He did not return to the world as it had been. The world, to most, remained the same. Sun rising over fields, warriors sharpening blades, the gods laughing in great halls. But Odin now moved through it with a quiet difference. He walked as though the ground whispered beneath each footfall. He looked at faces as if seeing what came before them and what would come after. Those around him noticed it. Some turned toward him with reverence, others with unease. His voice had changed. It carried the weight of silence, the weight of someone who had listened to truths that had no language. He no longer asked questions aloud. He asked them with his presence, and even in laughter, even in celebration, there was something in him that stood apart, watching from a place just behind the world. The runes he had won did not remain still. They moved with him. They lived in his words, curled in the corners of his eye, echoed in the pauses between his sentences. They were not charms for control. They were vessels of pattern, of echo, of symbol. And Odin now was a keeper of the unseen structure beneath reality. He taught the runes to few, not because he wished to hoard their power, but because most could not bear their weight. To see what they revealed was to see the beauty and the unraveling, the beginnings inside every ending, the death braided into every joy. With this knowledge, Odin became a weaver in his own right, not like the Norns who spun the threads of destiny, but like a dreamer who tried to understand the pattern of the weave, tried to touch it gently, not to change it, but to remember it. Still, the knowledge took its toll. Though his name was sung in feasts, though his spear Gungnir shone in the sun, Odin often walked alone. He returned again and again to the roots of the tree. He returned to Mimir's well, listening without speaking. Sometimes he spoke with Frigg, not as wife to husband, but as two beings too full of knowing to pretend. Their union was quiet, not of fire, but of stone, warmed by light. She too knew much, and like Odin, she bore it in silence. And always there was the pull of what was to come. Odin had seen it on the runes, in the smoke, in the dream-laden breath of the seers. Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, the wolf Fenrir breaking free, the serpent Jörmungandr rising from the sea, fire sweeping from Muspelheim, the tree shaking, the sky cracking, his own death by the wolf's jaws. He did not try to stop it, he only tried to prepare. He gathered knowledge not to avert fate, but to meet it with eyes open. This was Odin's legacy, not just wisdom, but the courage to bear it, the willingness to know without running, to see the truth of impermanence and still to love the world, to know that everything, even gods, will pass, and still to plant trees, to teach poems, to walk through rain. His sacrifices, his transformations, were not grand gestures of pride. They were quiet devotions to the unseen. Even his very name, Odin, is only one of many. He was also called Allfather, the Allfather, but also Grimnir, the Masked One, the one who conceals, the one who wanders, the one who waits. He lived not as a king who demanded, but as a god who wondered, and that wonder shaped all things. Through him, magic and meaning entwined. The runes spread among the poets, the witches, the storytellers. Even mortals in their dreams felt the edge of his knowing. Even now it is said, if you walk alone in the forests where the fog curls low, you may hear the ravens caw, and perhaps, in the pause between heartbeats, feel the gaze of the one who gave everything to understand, not to rule the world, but to read it, to listen as it faded, and to whisper its name before the silence. Segment 3, The Mystery and Law, Part 1. Introduce the mystery or phenomenon. There are places in myth that do not rest easily in the light, not because they are evil or hidden with shame, but because they hum with something older than language, something we do not explain but approach with hush. Places where gods went to seek what even they could not name. One such place was the Well of Mimir. It is not a well as mortals know it, not merely a stone ring around clear water. It is a stillness at the edge of time, a pool beneath the root of the world tree where memory sleeps and wisdom does not shine, but seeps slowly, like mist into moss. Its name, Mimisbrunna, means Mimir's well, though who or what Mimir truly was remains elusive. The stories say he was a Jotun, a being of ancient frost, or perhaps he was something else entirely, older than giants, older than war. What is known is that he was keeper of the well, its guardian, its voice. Long ago, before the peace between the Aesir and the Vanir gods, Mimir was sent as part of a truce, a gift of wisdom from the Aesir. But the Vanir, mistrustful, resentful, cut off his head. Yet even in death, Mimir did not fall silent. Odin, unwilling to lose that voice, took the head. He preserved it with herbs and spells, laying it beside the well once more. And there it whispered. From that day forward, Odin returned often, not with demands, but with offerings. Sometimes a question, sometimes a breath, always a cost. And so the mystery deepened. A well at the base of the cosmic tree, guarded by a head that cannot die, speaking wisdom that cannot be owned. What did Odin hear there? What did he ask? No tale tells us directly, and that, perhaps, is what gives the well its weight. It is not just a source of knowledge. It is a symbol of the kind of knowing that resists control, the kind of truth that does not arrive in thunder, but in water rippling without wind. Some say that the well is memory itself, liquid thought, the dream before waking. Others believe it contains the echoes of everything that has ever been spoken or even thought, since the first breath was drawn in the cosmos. Odin, who gave his eye to drink from it, must have seen something vast. something that changed the way he saw the stars. Perhaps he saw himself, not as a god, but as a thread, a single strand woven through something endless. Perhaps that is why he grew quiet in later years. The well does not reveal what you want, it reveals what you are, and in that reflection lies both power and pain. For Mimir does not speak in riddles for amusement, he speaks in symbols that can only be half understood, and what cannot be fully understood must be carried. Odin drank and carried it all, the memory of a world before form, the promise of its unraveling, the burden of knowing both at once. Part 2. Offer interpretations, stories, and opposing theories. The Well of Mimir has inspired many tales told around hearth fires in the long northern dark, or whispered beneath moss-heavy trees by those who still remember the old ways. But none agree entirely on what the well truly is, nor what Odin saw when he drank from its waters. In one version, told by skalds who favored symbolism, the well is said to reflect not just the past, but all possible pasts, paths that were never walked, choices never made. When Odin drank, he saw not only his fate, but the infinite lines of fate that might have been. He saw himself as a frost giant, as a forgotten god, as a child who never looked up. In that reflection, he learned that choice itself carries weight, that every thread denied still vibrates somewhere just beyond reach. Others say the well is not a reflection at all, but a mirror that inverts, that it shows not who you are, but who you hide. For Odin, it revealed not the king, not the wanderer, but the frightened child who sought meaning in stars because silence frightened him. It showed him the eye he did not give, the one that still longed to close. In older songs, seldom sung now, the well is described as an ear, not an eye, a place where the world listens. The runes drift upon its surface like songs half remembered. Mimir's head speaks not with a voice, but with vibrations that enter the soul like dreams. Odin did not merely hear words, he felt them pass through him, changing the shape of his silence. There are even darker tales. In those, Mimir is not merely a wise guardian, but a prison, a mind bound by truth too vast to bear, a being who once saw too much and could not turn away. His head speaks because it must, because to keep what he knows inside would shatter him. Odin, in these versions, does not go to seek wisdom, but to suffer it, to share the burden of impossible knowledge. In drinking from the well, he takes some of that madness into himself. These are not cheerful stories, but they are not cruel either. They are quiet warnings about the cost of knowing. Still, Odin returned again and again. Why? Perhaps he did not seek answers. Perhaps he sought understanding, to sit beside something greater than oneself and not demand clarity, to let mystery breathe. That is a kind of wisdom too, and the well, in turn, offers nothing that is not earned. Its water does not refresh, it deepens, its silence does not soothe, it listens, and in that listening, it reveals. Odin was not the only one to feel its pull. In some sagas, other gods came near, but turned away. Thor, bold and golden, once stood beside it and grew still. He placed a hand on the water's surface and saw not a vision, but a shadow. He left without speaking. Frigg, it is said, once dreamed of the well. In her dream, it whispered her son's fate, the death of Balder, the grief beyond healing. She awoke with tears on her pillow and never returned to that dream again. Loki never approached it, or perhaps he knew it too well already. For what is Mimir's well, if not the embodiment of consequences, of the weight behind every word, every joke, every fire lit? But Odin, he accepted it, embraced it. The well did not give him comfort, it gave him awareness, and that awareness shaped all that followed. When he spoke to the other gods, he spoke less as ruler, more as reminder. When he taught mortals, he did not offer commandments, but riddles, because what he learned from the well was that truth is never still. It moves, it shifts, and only those willing to be changed by it can carry it well. Part 3. Gentle reflection. What is left unsolved and why it matters. In the softest parts of the myth, the parts not sung in halls or carved on stones, there remains something unanswered. Why did Odin continue to seek the well long after he had gained its wisdom? Why return to a place that does not speak plainly, a place that offers no comfort? Perhaps it was not for more knowledge, but to sit beside the mystery itself, to be near the stillness, and to remember that not all questions must be answered, that some must only be held. In this way, Mimir's well becomes not a source, but a companion, a reminder that wisdom is not the end of the road, but the beginning of wonder. It reminds us that even gods do not know everything. Even gods must listen. And sometimes, in listening, we find what language cannot teach. For those who tell Odin's story often miss this part. They speak of the spear, the throne, the ravens, the war, but they forget the quiet places, the moments when Odin sat beneath the roots and said nothing at all, when he placed his hand on the water's surface, not to command it, but simply to feel that it was there. It is easy to imagine gods as distant, blazing, unreachable. But Odin, in his deepest truth, was a god of nearness, not always of warmth, but of presence. He came close, in disguise, not to trick, but to see, to hear stories from old women who remembered the frost, to drink with shepherds who named stars in their own language, to learn the shape of dreams that were not his. And always he returned to the well, not because it changed, but because he did. And each time he changed, the well showed him something new. Mimir's head, quiet, eternal, did not offer answers. It reflected, and in that reflection, Odin saw not only the world, but himself. All his names, all his choices, all the lives he might have lived. That is why he gave his eye, not just to see the future, but to lose the illusion that he could know it all. The well leaves us with a gift, not a truth to carry, but a space to dwell in. A reminder that wonder and uncertainty are not flaws in the world, but part of its music. And maybe that is why Odin feared blindness. not the darkness behind the eyes, but the stillness that refuses to listen, the arrogance that closes the door, the certainty that ends the question. He feared becoming deaf to the mystery. He feared forgetting to sit beside the well, and so he listened, and so he returned, not because he lacked answers, but because answers were not the goal. The goal was to be changed, to be humbled, to be near something greater, and still to be quiet. In this, Odin's story becomes more than legend. It becomes invitation, an invitation to sit beneath our own trees, to listen for water beneath the silence, to give up the need to explain, and to simply be with the mystery. Segment 4: Alternate Paths and Forgotten Truths. Part 1: The traditional version, softly recounted. The tale most often told of Odin is one carved in bold lines. He is the Allfather, wise and mighty, the king of the Aesir gods, ruler of Asgard, bearer of the spear Gungnir, and master of the runes. He sits upon the high throne of Yggdrasil, from which he sees across all 9 realms. Each morning, his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, return with news of the worlds, while his wolves, Geri and Freki, sit faithfully at his feet. He wears a cloak of grey, his beard long and white, one eye gleaming with a knowledge few can comprehend. In this traditional tale, Odin is a god of war, wisdom, and sovereignty. He chooses who lives and who dies in battle. The Valkyries serve him, riding to mortal fields to gather the fallen warriors worthy of Valhalla. There, these chosen fight by day and feast by night, preparing for the final battle, Ragnarok. He is cunning, he is powerful, he is, in the sagas, often feared as much as he is revered. The story most often begins with his rule firmly established. The gods walk strong in Asgard. The rainbow bridge, Bifrost, shimmers across the sky, and the world tree Yggdrasil rises like a living pillar through existence. Odin holds the center. He is not soft. He does not hesitate. He speaks in prophecy and parable. He seeks wisdom with the hunger of one who knows that even the gods are bound by fate. He gives his eye to drink from Mimir's well. He hangs himself upon Yggdrasil to uncover the runes. He sacrifices and endures because knowledge is worth more than comfort. He commands armies. He outwits giants. He weaves treaties and tests kings. He is god of skalds and seers alike. In the Eddas, he is both terrifying and noble. The warriors love him for Valhalla. The poets love him for riddles. The witches love him for Seda. And yet the myths are clear. Odin is not good in the way mortals understand. He is not kind. He is not always fair. But he is always necessary. The world is held together in many ways by his vision. His gaze reaches far beyond the present. He is preparing for an end he cannot prevent, but can meet with honor. When Ragnarok comes, it is Odin who leads. He rides Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, into battle against the great wolf Fenrir. The two are destined for one another. Odin will be devoured. The wolf's jaws are too vast, too ancient. But Odin meets that fate with open eyes. And in his fall, the cycle begins anew. Because in Norse myth, nothing truly ends. Everything is carried forward, braided into the next becoming. Odin's death is not failure, it is fulfillment. And so the tale goes, a god born of frost and fire, who gave himself to wisdom, who carried the runes into the world, and who met the wolf not with fear, but with knowing. It is a powerful tale. It echoes with strength, but what if it is not the only one? What if behind that proud mask, polished by poets and crowned in saga, there is another Odin, one quieter, more hesitant, more human, one who feared not death but blindness, one who sought not to conquer but to understand. In the parts that come next, we will walk softly. We will lift the edge of the old stories just slightly and look beneath. We will not break them, but we will ask gently what they left behind. Part 2, the alternate version or suppressed story. There is a version of the tale that was not carved into stone or sung by skalds before kings. It is softer, stranger, and often left untold, not because it contradicts the myth, but because it listens to its quiet places. In this forgotten path, Odin is not the unshakable Allfather, but a god who learns by losing. He does not begin at the summit of wisdom. He stumbles toward it, uncertain. And his power is not in might or command, but in the courage to question even himself. In this version, Odin does not ride Sleipnir in glory. He walks, hooded and alone, across frozen fields where no fire warms. He listens more than he speaks. His stories are not always lessons, they are often memories, and his wisdom, it does not come from certainty, it comes from bearing the weight of not knowing. Here, when he visits Mimir's well, he does not do so as a king seeking mastery, but as a soul asking quietly, is it right to see this far? In this telling, he does not give his eye because he is fearless. He gives it because he is afraid. Afraid that without understanding, he will become something hollow, something distant. He fears becoming only the role others have written for him. So he chooses to lose something, to see more clearly. And when he hangs upon Yggdrasil, he does not do so to gain runes for power. He does so to become worthy of carrying them. For the runes in this story are not weapons. They are songs of sorrow, symbols of change, each one a lesson shaped in pain. They do not obey, they remember. And Odin, with every whisper of their meaning, grows quieter, not in defeat, but in reverence. In this version, Odin visits Midgard not to guide or rule, but to learn. He sits with the dying, he listens to the old. He watches children draw shapes in the dirt and wonders what truths they know that the gods have forgotten. Sometimes they ask him his name. He never gives the same answer twice, because Odin here is not a god of identity, but of evolution. And in this tale, when Ragnarok rises, Odin does not ride to war for victory. He rides because it is his duty to bear witness, to meet the wolf, not to stop it, but to see it clearly, to name it. And in being named, the ending becomes a kind of release, a soft opening to the next becoming. The wolf too has waited. In this telling, Fenrir is not just destruction, he is inevitability, the cost of cycles, the hunger that comes when things refuse to change, and Odin accepts him, not as enemy, but as mirror, because what Odin feared most was not being devoured, it was not knowing what lay on the other side. And so in this story, his final breath is not a cry of defiance, it is a whisper, a thank you for the mystery, for the chance to change again. In this quiet version, the gods are not symbols of eternal power, they are metaphors for the journey all souls walk, the journey from self to silence, to something deeper, a becoming that does not end, but unfolds. And in the space where the myth fades, this Odin remains, not as a statue, not as a tale, but as a presence in the pause between thoughts, in the stillness that invites you to listen, to wonder, to feel your own longing mirrored in the shape of a god who walked toward the unknown, not to master it, but to meet it. Part 3. Reflect on how stories evolve and what truths remain. Stories change, they grow, soften, sharpen, twist. They are carried from voice to voice, shaped by the breath that speaks them. And somewhere between what is said and what is felt, truth lingers. The tale of Odin is no different. In some mouths, he is warrior king, bold, commanding, stern as steel. In others, he is shadow walker, spellbinder, the god who gave everything for the knowing. In still others, he is sorrowed, softened, silent, a figure who walks beside us rather than above. None are wrong. Each is a facet, a reflection of how we, the tellers and the dreamers, seek meaning in the myth. Because Odin is not only a god, he is a lens. He allows us to look at the world and ask, what is worth knowing? What will we sacrifice to understand? And what happens when we do? The old stories were told around firelight, in long winters, when the wind howled like wolves outside. They were survival, not just entertainment. They carried not only adventure, but warning, not only magic, but mirrors. The people who first shaped Odin's myth lived in a world of storm and stone, where life was brief and the gods were not comforts, but companions in uncertainty. And so Odin became what they needed, a god who sees, a god who does not run from the dark, but walks into it willingly. But over time, as the stories traveled, as they were written and rewritten, some edges dulled, some depths were lifted to the surface. The fire-bright Odin of Valhalla grew taller in the telling. The quiet one beneath the tree grew dimmer, and yet he remains, not on the page, but in the pause. In the moment when someone, anyone, sits and wonders, is there more beneath this? The truth is, there always is. Every myth is a tapestry, its threads knotted in silence as much as speech. And Odin's story, perhaps more than any other, invites us to step closer to the loom, to ask not just who he was, but why he was. Why did he wander? Why did he give so much? Was it fear? Was it longing? Was it love? Was it a reflection of our own deep desire to understand the world, even when it hurts? Perhaps that's the true heart of this tale. Not a god on a throne, not a spear or a wolf or the sky set ablaze, but a soul, ancient and searching, who knew that knowledge would not save him, and chose it anyway, who met the unknown with open hands, and who gave us, in that act, a way to face our own questions. Because in the end, the oldest myths do not tell us what to believe. They invite us to believe with feeling, to see the God in the mirror, to feel the well beneath our feet, to hang for a moment in the stillness between what was and what will be, to listen and to walk forward, even when we don't yet know where the path will lead. That perhaps is what Odin left behind. Not certainty, but courage. Not command, but curiosity. And in a world where so much is noise and rush and answer, that is a kind of power we still need. And now, the story begins to fade, not with an ending, not with a final breath, but with the quiet hush that comes when something ancient has been spoken aloud. The tale of Odin, the wanderer, the seeker, the god who gave and gave, grows still again, folding itself back into the soft fabric of night. You have walked beside him through frost and fire, silence and song. You have seen the world before it was shaped and watched it rise from sacrifice. You have felt the hush of the well, the weight of the runes, the long shadow cast by knowing. And perhaps you feel now what Odin may have felt so often, that strange, tender ache of understanding something just enough to know how deep it truly goes, and how gently it must be held. You do not need to remember every name, every branch of the tree, every rune whispered from root to sky. The purpose of the tale was never to teach, but to wrap around you like soft wool and breathe in rhythm with your thoughts, to let you rest, not because the world is solved, but because it has been witnessed. Even gods, it seems, grow tired. Even the oldest powers close their eyes. And so now, as sleep begins to gather around your shoulders, think of Odin not as a thunderous figure in the clouds, but as a presence, a quiet one, a figure in a grey cloak, sitting beneath a tree too vast to see fully, listening to water drip slowly in the dark, letting memory rise without rush, without need to act. Think of him as the part of you that still seeks, not because something is missing, but because seeking is sacred, because wonder is holy, and because questions are not things to fear, but to walk with. Let your breath slow now, like the turning of distant stars. Let your thoughts drift like leaves falling through the branches of Yggdrasil. You are not outside the myth. You are resting inside it. Perhaps you too have sat beside the well. Perhaps you have walked alone on roads without names. And perhaps now you need only to be still, to know that the wisdom you seek is already here, soft, quiet, waiting in the hush before dreams. And as you drift further into the folds of sleep, the voice of the story begins to quiet. The branches above you sway, and two ravens pass silently overhead, vanishing into the sky that cradles the 9 realms. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, not with menace, but as a song to the end of the day. And the one-eyed god, old and dreaming, smiles, not with victory, not with grief, but with peace. He has seen enough for now, and so have you. Rest well, traveler of stories. Let the tree hold you. Let the silence deepen. Let the mystery remain.
Mm-hmm.